Good morning. You're watching Business Plus. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. First up, let's begin with headlines. India set to be world's third largest economy by 2028, on course to achieve a GDP of $30 trillion by 2047, says Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman at the Vibrant Gujarat Summit. And the Vibrant Gujarat Summit 2024 sees industrialists lining up to invest in the western state. Ambani to Adani commit to huge investments in renewable green energy to semiconductor space. And SpiceJet has exclusive rights for Lakshadweep, will be launching flights to Agatti Island very soon, says Chairman and MD Ajay Singh. Boeing CEO fights back tears, admits mistake in the 737 address, commits to complete transparency after the major safety incident. In a game changer in the world of Bitcoin, the US Securities and Exchange Commission approves exchange-traded funds that invest directly in Bitcoin. The landmark judgment will broaden access to the cryptocurrency market. All those stories we are tracking here on News9. Kartik, Malhotra with me in the studio.
Hi,
Kartik,
Shweta.
hello. The top story that we are tracking coming, by the way, what's happening in Gujarat at the moment, where throngs of industrialists, entrepreneurs, the biggest newsmakers and the names are currently in Gujarat. They are either sharing what is going to be in order from their companies or talking about plans to build Gujarat and build India in turn. Just yesterday, we saw Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman actually detailing as to what her plans are for the country and how India is on course to achieve that 30 trillion GDP mark by 2047.
Absolutely. So I think just prior to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman taking stage, you also had Mukesh Ambani, and Mukesh Ambani in fact had set a higher target for India's GDP, saying that India will be a $35 trillion economy by 2047. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman being a little more realistic and saying that 30 trillion is a more likely scenario by 2047. In addition to that, of course, the $5 trillion plans which have been in the making and have been elusive for the last 5 years or so are likely to come through by the year 27-28. So India is obviously then going to be the third largest economy in the world. It's nothing new. It's not something that we haven't spoken about earlier. It's not something that analysts have not spoken about earlier. But Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman giving a definitive dateline, saying that FY28, by when India will become a $5 trillion economy, is a certainty.
And numbers are lining up, come to think of it. We are close to $4 trillion at the moment.
We are already a $3.7 trillion economy.
3.8 when we last heard.
Yeah, so 3.75 or then near about. So even if we grow at a 7%, marginal rate 7%, which is lower than the Statistical Office has released and the Ministry of Statistics has released, and lower than the expectation of 7.2% that the RBI has also released, then we are likely to definitely be a $4 trillion economy by the end of this financial year.
Absolutely. The numbers are realistic. Before we delve deeper into them, let's quickly listen in to what Nirmala Sitharaman had to say.
Looking at development as being a partnership where you leverage the strength of the state and look at strengthening those challenges, in the sense get over the challenges and make them strengths for the states. Therefore, I call it a partnership between the center and states. So this participatory approach is what gives us the language for thinking about how India can be reaching that target through the Amrit Kal, the 25 years between now and 47, that we can reach to build a developed India, not just in terms of what will be reached, 30 trillion US dollars by 2047, but also with the 30 trillion inclusive, empowering growth for all citizens. So Viksit Bharat agenda is a comprehensive vision plan which is being developed by Government of India. I appreciate the effort of the state in getting this already on board.
The Viksit Bharat agenda, inclusive growth. I think inclusive growth has been one of the cornerstones of this government's promise to develop country. 30 trillion is the number intact. That is going to be in sight every time a new policy is rolled out. This is a very crucial time. You know, this is coming right ahead of those crucial 2-3 months buffer that the current government has before it goes to election, just at least about 20 days before the interim budget would be out, which is going to set stage for what's to come in the the next 5 years?
I don't know whether the interim budget is actually going to set stage for anything substantial when you talk about a long-term India perspective, and we'll have to wait for the new government to take office and the real budget to be announced. But I think inclusive development, yes. And what FM was talking about, the partnership between states and centre, definitely yes, there has been positive movement in that direction. And on inclusiveness, overall, I think the direct beneficiary transfers, the DBT scheme, overall financial inclusion by way of the Jan Dhan accounts that have been opened, banking the unbanked, these are obviously great credits to the BJP government, great credit to the overall financial ecosystem architecture that has been built in India over the last 1 decade or so. But I think the problem still lies, and the core of the problem lies with the fact that even at $30 trillion in 2047, what is the per capita GDP? I think at some level we will have to stop comparing ourselves to countries like Germany and Japan, which are much smaller in the number of people that they house, much smaller in the overall land available to them, and India being a much larger economy, 30 trillion translating down to the per capita income of still being in the range of about $2,600 or so per citizen per year is way too small compared to, let's say, US, which is right now at about $26 trillion, lesser than what India is likely to be by 2047. Boasting of a per capita income of about $80,000. China, on the other hand, already has a per capita GDP 6 times that of India at about $12,000, despite having almost the same number of people as India has. So I think every time we talk about these big headline GDP numbers, GDP as a whole being the third largest, second largest, first largest is all right, but it has to translate to per capita GDP. And that, for a country housing the number of people we do, 1.4 billion and counting, is going to be a far cry for India.
Absolutely, at about $2,000 per capita GDP, not there just as yet when compared to other countries who are at the top of the chart.
True.
As far as their growth rate is concerned, but promising a growth rate of at least 7.3% this financial year. These are some headline numbers that sound very, very good, but the promise is a bit elusive of Viksit Bharat. Government there, of course, trying its best to ensure that the policy framework is supporting that vision. But as far as vision for Gujarat is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of industrialists are currently in Gujarat. They are going to be in Gujarat for the next 2 days as Vibrant Gujarat Summit kick-started yesterday with Prime Minister Modi also addressing people on what his vision of Bharat will be. We also heard Gautam Adani, we heard Ambanis, we heard the Mittals, we heard literally all people who are at the top of the power when it comes to really, encouraging that growth, that private sector growth in the country, and they promised some huge number. The headline numbers are very interesting. 2 lakh crore rupees as far as Adani is concerned.
Absolutely. So I think Gautam Adani takes the cake when it comes to headlines, definitely even in 2024, even though he seems to have left behind what happened from 24th of Jan 2023 onwards for pretty much the whole year. But 2 lakh crore rupees of investments is as big as it gets, right? I don't think we've heard those sort of promises, those sort of pitches ever in the past. So 2 lakh crore rupees, 2 trillion rupees worth of investments coming just from one group, which is Adani Enterprises. Now, add to that about 38,000 crore rupees or so, which Maruti Suzuki, and Suzuki, the parent of Maruti Suzuki, is pledging to invest in a second plant in Gujarat. They already have a plant in Sanand, and we are talking about a second plant now. Add to that what N. Chandra of Tata Sons has said, and he said that there is going to obviously be a focus on semiconductors, and that initiative is yet to be announced. But semiconductors, production of semiconductors, manufacturing of semiconductors is a focus area for the Tata Group. Add to that, we are also talking about more production and more EV production happening in the state. A 20 gig electric vehicle lithium-ion battery plant to be launched by the Tata Group in the state of Gujarat. We are talking about Reliance Industries, of course, Mukesh Ambani there taking center stage yesterday, committing to the fact that that solar energy, green energy, renewable energy, 50% of the capacity required for the state of Gujarat by 2030 is actually going to come from the plants which will be operationalized by Reliance Industries. So we've got industrialists of all hues Many of them Gujaratis. In fact, Mukesh Ambani very, very proudly wearing that chip of being a Gujarati, his company being a Gujarati company, very, very proudly on his shoulder. And you know, it's not surprise. Everybody knows where Mukesh Ambani hails from, but really taking stage and saying that he owes it back to the state and is going to invest in the state is big. But I think let's not just look at Indian companies. It's important also to look at what global companies are committing to do.
Absolutely.
And by way of an Indian entrepreneur, many Indian entrepreneurs, in fact, who are leading global companies, ArcelorMittal being one. Lakshmi Narayan Mittal saying that it is going to make the world's largest integrated steel manufacturing plant in Hazira in Gujarat is the next headline that dominates newspapers today. And Sanjay Malhotra, Micron, one of the first investments in the semiconductor space, building a fab and saying that it's going to be operational as early as 2025. Obviously means that MOUs that get signed, partnerships, handshakes that happen at conferences do sometimes translate to real rapid development, real rapid production. And Micron is a great example of witnessing the fact that Modi had met Sanjay Malhotra on his visit to US in the month of July. They inked an MOU, they shook hands, and within months that initial commitment of investment was made, ground was broken, and within a year or so from now we will have India's first real global semiconductor fab up and running in Gujarat.
Absolutely. So some big headline numbers coming in there from Vibrant Gujarat Summit. Day 2 kick-started today. A massive investment plans have also been unveiled so far when it comes to top industries in the country, from Adani to Ambani to Mittals. All are bullish on India. They're bullish on the Gujarat's development story, and the summit will continue for the next 2 days. We'll get you all those details on News 9. But with that, it's time for a short break. We'll be back in just a bit.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, that US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, you know, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, you know, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9+. Download now.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9+, ahead of the curve.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
And the state has not been able to handle that part of its own responsibilities.
It's not the fiefdom of politicians. They owe it to the people.
Everybody is as good a citizen as we. As a Telangana person, I will not accept his leadership.
What was worrying was the stories that were coming from the Congress that there was internal sabotage.
You can't straight away give 12%, there is no provision.
Exactly.
You need to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, just because they are tribal, everyone does it.
Wait.
That's my problem. How do ordinary folks deal with this? Think about it.
Welcome back. If you are planning to take a trip to Lakshadweep anytime soon and are wondering whether a flight is available or not, and if it's not available, it will be made available very soon. That's the promise coming in from SpiceJet right now, suggesting that they have exclusive right over flight operations in Lakshadweep. Kartik, the row is becoming bigger, but also becoming more interesting with Maldives and, suggesting Lakshadweep as an alternative to the island nation of Maldives and perhaps other places that are available to India. But Lakshadweep does not seem to have a direct flight just as yet. You've got to go to Kochi. From there, you've got to take a flight, but even that is not really available. And SpiceJet now promising we are coming up with more flights.
Yeah, so I think SpiceJet is trying to tick all the right boxes because it's not just Lakshadweep, it's also saying that it's going to fly to Ayodhya and is going to avail of this regional connectivity scheme called UDAN, Mission UDAN, which the Indian government has embarked upon. So, there is a flight. Alliance Air flies from Kochi to Agatti Airport and back, but I think it's going to take, number one, a lot more than airlines pledging that they will fly to the sector. Number one, of course, is already on the government's roadmap is to make the runway longer. So there's only one landing strip right now at the Agatti airport, and that is not likely to be able to accommodate the wide-bodied, bigger aircraft which need a much longer runway. So number one, government is already looking at making the runway longer, extending its length. But I think it's not just going to be airlines alone. You will have to look at a lot more hospitality, a lot more convenience added. You'll need cabs, you'll need cab aggregators, you'll need hotels, you'll need restaurants, you'll need road connectivity, you'll need all sorts of this, infrastructure which builds the entire tourism ecosystem in Lakshadweep, which I think is obviously going to take much longer than people wanting to book a flight right now and travel to Lakshadweep. Some adventurous folks could do it already. They could go to Kochi and from Kochi take the Alliance Air flight and back. But my bigger problem is, or rather question, not a problem yet, is that there's a problem that SpiceJet is dealing with, and that problem is cash flow. So the board of directors may have approved the 2,200 crore rupees worth of fresh funding, but where is that money coming from? So as part of its expansion, using the fresh funding as part of expansion is all very well, but that fresh funding has to first come in. And when it does come in, should SpiceJet further bolster and strengthen the busier sectors and really rake in the money from those sectors, or look at destinations like Lakshadweep or Ayodhya, is a larger question that I think Ajay Singh
So clean up its operations first, or start plying on new routes?
Should you look at busier sectors, sure shot sectors, and get money from those seats, or should you look at new sunrise sectors? Ayodhya, I think, is still likely to see more traffic than Lakshadweep in the...
You never know about Lakshadweep.
But yeah, I think Lakshadweep, the entire infrastructure development, the entire ecosystem building will definitely take time. So would it be an alternative to Maldives? I mean, yeah, we could be patriotic and we could be very nationalistic and say that yes, it will be an alternative, but just scenic beauty does not make it an alternative, not just to Maldives, even to Thailand, even to many other island cities and nations out there.
But you do have a lot of private players who are now showing interest in Lakshadweep by the way of building resorts, hopefully also building more road connectivity, having better facilities when it comes to visitation from tourists. What's also important is the ecological sensitivity of the area. Can it really accommodate as many tourists which fly to Maldives annually would be the question.
Absolutely. I think that is the fine balance that will have to be done by way of policy making and by way of, prioritizing economic interest, tourism interest with ecological or the natural life sciences interest. I think that fine balance will have to be done given the fact that Lakshadweep and the islands surrounding it are still fairly virgin in their exploration, I think we can definitely look at some uptick in tourism without disrupting the natural ecological balance much. Should you let it become a Goa? Perhaps not.
Perhaps
Should
not.
you let
Absolutely.
it become a Phuket?
Actually, absolutely
Perhaps
not. Yes. I mean, I'm sure environmentalists will frown upon the idea of Lakshadweep becoming the next Goa. But of course, a lot of development there needed to support the influx of tourists who are hopefully going to fly after that social media post by Prime Minister went viral, pitting India against Maldives. The Maldivian ministers who made those derogatory remarks against the Prime Minister as well as Indians have been suspended. But the row is not going to blow out anytime soon. It is intact, in fact, only picking up heat with more private players suggesting that they will jump in fray, will provide better access to Indian coastal lines. But sticking on with what's happening in the aviation sector, Boeing is in the news for all the wrong reasons for the last couple of days after that door plug ejected mid-air at the 737 flight of the MAX 9 fleet. Boeing CEO has now come out officially apologized for the incident and also said that they're going to be more transparent when it comes to safety of passengers. But there's been a huge, not just an economic blowout of that incident, but also, you know, a blowout as to how safe are we when we are taking to these flights.
And a blowout is very well used because obviously that is exactly what happened. The door plug literally blew out mid-air and it has been discovered just yesterday morning in the backyard of a teacher, and NTSB, the National Safety Transportation Board, has finally been able to get that panel picked up to investigate into what really went wrong. But initial reports which are coming from global media are suggesting that the company which was the contract manufacturer for these door plugs contracted by Boeing had drilled holes in the wrong places, and of the many aircraft, the 171 737 MAX 9 aircraft that remain grounded since Jan 5th, many of them have discovered the nuts and bolts of that plug being loose. So is it a design flaw? Is it a maintenance flaw? Is it an engineering flaw? I think all these questions will get answered subsequently, but Boeing, rightly so, has come out and taken responsibility. Dave Calhoun, the CEO of Boeing, reportedly has held back tears at a conference in Seattle in the factory floor of the 737 aircraft and has as much as said that safety is going to become the top priority of Boeing. Unfortunately, that that pride in engineering, that pride in safety for Boeing, which was once the largest manufacturer of commercial aircraft in the world, had taken a backseat in the year 1997 when it had done the acquisition of McDonnell Douglas. And immediately from an engineering company, it became a more Wall Street savvy company. It wanted to show better profits, it wanted to show better returns, and wanted to get investors excited with its prospects and not as much as the convenience and safety and comfort of flyers. So the company that prided itself as an engineering company became the darling of the Wall Street, compromising on its ethics and concerns around safety and comfort of passengers. That seems to be coming back in forefront now, with CEO Dave Calhoun taking responsibility, admitting the mistake, and saying that it is going to be transparent about the probe of that incident, and it is only going to be on the behest of Boeing giving a final go-ahead to the 737 MAX 9 fleet before it takes to the skies again, and it will take responsibility for the incident.
Come to think of it, the MAX fleet has been in controversy since 2018.
That's right.
Two fatal crashes killing hundreds of people.
Absolutely. 2018 there was Lion Air, 2019 there was Ethiopian Airlines. 346 people, if I'm not mistaken, had lost their lives, but that was a separate issue, Shweta. We did not really see panels or windows or doors blowing out. It was actually a problem with the MCAS, an autopilot feature, which the 737 pilots had not been trained on, and it was omitted from the flight manual in the training program of pilots. So anytime there's an emergency, the MCAS warning sign would light up, but in the manual, the pilots would not know how to handle that situation. So it was pretty much an override feature where the autopilot would take over and not let the pilot switch off autopilot and take control in certain exceptional circumstances. But yeah, even that resulted in the entire MAX fleet across the world being grounded, including India. and that NCAS issue, the pilot training was fixed and it was included in the flight manual before the MAX fleet took to the skies again. Now, thankfully, the MAX 9 is right now limited mostly. It is a bulwark in the US. It is, in fact, one of the biggest fleet of aircraft operating in US, 171 aircraft which stand grounded right now. Thankfully, in India, we don't have the MAX 9 as yet. Some reports indicate that Mukesh Ambani's private jet is a MAX 9. I can't confirm that report, but that's just something I picked up on social media the other day, so narrating it here.
So no MAX 9 for India at this point.
None of the commercial carriers are flying the MAX 9
fleet, so no direct impact there on India, but Boeing continues to be in the news. And keeping up with what's happening in the US in a game changer for Bitcoin and the world of cryptocurrency, the US SEC has now approved Bitcoin ETF. Now, to begin with, what does it really mean for Bitcoins and ETFs and people who are looking to invest in Bitcoin but perhaps not holding them directly?
So, Shweta, I think it's a very, very significant move for the cryptocurrency world. And in fact, just ahead of this approval coming from US SEC, Bitcoin had rallied as much as almost $1,900 or so, reaching a peak of almost $46,930 or so from an already high of $45,000. And I think this acceptance of ETF pretty much means that there could be firms out there, asset management companies out there, which could and apparently would launch an exchange traded fund that buys into the cryptocurrency called Bitcoin as early as starting today, US time, Thursday. So you could actually have companies like BlackRock, Invesco, Fidelity, etc. announcing their ETFs, which means that the asset management company is actually going to buy the Bitcoin and is going to and you as an investor could buy that ETF, that exchange trading fund, which is going to give you returns on the basis of the movement of the cryptocurrency. So you're not directly holding it, you're not using it as cash or in lieu of cash to buy goods or services. You're looking at it purely as an investment, and the fact that AMCs will be allowed to buy it as a legit tool, an investment tool or an investment asset, means that the US is pretty much legitimizing an asset class called cryptocurrencies. And these spot ETFs are going to offer the spot price of the Bitcoin in the cryptocurrency market, and your investment, which is going to be parked with the asset management company, is going to buy and sell those Bitcoins and give you returns in accordance with the movement of Bitcoin. So overall, it is absolutely now a legit investment class in the United States. And I think there is now going to obviously be more exposure, not just from US investors, but investors across the world who will want to dip into this more formal and more secure SEC-backed asset class called the Bitcoin ETF.
Absolutely, and approved by SEC, although SEC chairperson coming on record suggesting we're not really supporting cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, and giving fair warning as to the volatility that continues to persist in cryptocurrency market. Let's quickly listen in to how the US has now legitimized cryptocurrency as an asset and what does it mean for the markets.
A game changer in the world of cryptocurrency. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission on Wednesday approved the first ever spot Bitcoin ETFs, giving institutional and retail investors exposure to the world's largest cryptocurrency without directly holding it. The funds, from asset managers including BlackRock, Fidelity, and ARK Investments and 21 Shares, among others, track Bitcoin's spot price in real time. Until now, only futures-based Bitcoin ETFs have been available. Some products are expected to begin trading as early as Thursday. The new funds are a major boost to an industry beset by a string of scandals, most notably the collapse of crypto exchange FTX and the conviction on fraud charges of its founder, Sam Bankman-Fried. Ben Laidler is global market strategist at eToro.
So I think it's another key step forward in the development of what is still by far the youngest, smallest, and most retail investor dominated of all the asset classes. And it's happening in what is by far the world's biggest capital market. Let's just recognize this is just one of what I think is a long laundry list of potential asset class catalysts this year. I mean, next up, we would have the Ethereum spot ETF decision, and then we move on to the April Bitcoin halving, on and on, any one of which I think is important in the context of what is still a very small asset class.
The green light from the SEC comes after a false start the day prior. Industry insiders and media outlets were caught off guard Tuesday evening when an unknown party posted on the SEC's X account that all the ETF products had been approved, sending investment executives scrambling to figure out what was happening. The SEC quickly disavowed and deleted the post and said authorities are investigating the incident. X confirmed late on Tuesday that the SEC's account was hacked. Bitcoin has gained more than 70% in recent months on the expectation ETFs for the asset would be approved. It was trading upwards of $46,000 on Wednesday. Standard Chartered analysts this week said the ETFs could draw $50 billion to $100 billion this year alone, driving the price of Bitcoin as high as $100,000.
Legitimacy there to Bitcoin with spot ETFs now officially trading in the US. You know, this goes really against all the ethos of Bitcoin, come to think of it. A currency that is supposed to be decentralized, not governed by, financial institutions, will now officially be governed. I'm assuming that is not what the founder of Bitcoin would have thought when he actually launched it.
I think, the fact that cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin in particular, does not have an underlying asset, does not have a revenue, does not have a P&L statement, does not have a balance sheet, pretty much suggests that it is still backed by blockchain. It is just that those movements can now be taken advantage of by retail investors because there is an exchange traded fund available. So it's not that the SEC or the markets per se or any macroeconomic policy measure is going to govern Bitcoin. I think the price will not be impacted. However, what will get impacted now is going to be the demand supply. Not everybody can go ahead and buy Bitcoin. In fact, Apple has just yesterday removed the Binance app from its platforms, which means that traders or regular investors like you and me, even sitting in the US, cannot go ahead and immediately buy Bitcoin. Given the fact that Bitcoin in any case is commanding the value that it is, buying a single Bitcoin, and there are going to be a total of just about 21 lakh Bitcoins ever mined anytime in the future, still makes it a low supply tool or asset. However, with a proposition like the ETF, the big boys like BlackRock or 21 Shares or Fidelity or Invesco can now actually buy those Bitcoins in bulk and offer the returns of those Bitcoins to investors, which means there's now going to be a much larger demand for investments into Bitcoin, if not people wanting to own the Bitcoins directly. So the demand is going to be higher, which is going to impact the price. Right. So the demand supply equation is now going to tilt in perhaps the equilibrium being reached at a higher price, but nothing else is really going to govern the price of Bitcoin. It is still unregulated, so to speak. It is still volatile. It does not have any sort of footing when it comes to a real backing of another asset class or another currency or any other profit and loss statement which governs its price. Now I think it's just the demand supply dynamics which are going to get even more exaggerated.
And I'm sure people trading in cryptocurrency are excited. In fact, people not trading in cryptocurrency but were hoping to reap in some of the benefits of the volatility in cryptocurrency are all the more excited.
So I think what becomes very, very relevant right now, Shweta, also is the fact that now with Indians investing in US securities, Indians through multiple platforms having access to buying shares or mutual funds or any other fund of funds in the US market, may now also want to participate in Bitcoin ETF. And is SEBI going to be all right with that? I think the next wave of regulations on cryptocurrency should take that into account. That in an open market, in a currency, in a sort of borderless currency or a borderless asset class, now you can actually have a legitimate way for even countries that have not yet accepted or regulated cryptocurrencies,
so their citizens to invest
their citizens
in ETFs.
May be able to make those investments using the ETF route.
Right, and will other countries also follow suit? Perhaps in India, will SEBI also come up with similar sort of regulations? We'll have to wait and watch out. But with that, it's time for a short, quick commercial break. We'll be back with World Business Report on the other side.